Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. So this is going to be the last video for the silicon carbide sharpening stone flattening and conditioning. I think that's what I've been calling it. And it's going to be kind of an overview of everything that we went through. I think there's like 2 or 3 hours worth of footage that's going to make it onto YouTube. And boy, if you guys have made it through this far, well then, give yourselves a pat on the back, because, if you're just kind of a knife person, you use knives, you use them to cook, to work with, all that kind of stuff, that's one level of interest. This right here is basically for us knife nuts, that just spend our entire lives working with knives and delving into all the little details of knives and sharpening and making and all that kind of stuff. So this is a pretty in-depth type video. But first of all, I got to show you. I went to a couple of good friends of mine yesterday celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, and their kids, which I guess I'm kind of one of the adopted kids there, kind of put together a big old party north of here, a couple hours. And I got to go to that yesterday with my wife. We had a really great time helping them celebrate 50 years of marriage, which is just pretty much amazing. I mean, that's a pretty big level of commitment. And they are awesome people. We really enjoy spending time with them every chance we get. But on the way up there, I visited another friend who lives in Wheatland, and he makes some pretty amazing furniture with like epoxy coatings on the top, and like inset, inset river rocks and like turquoise and different colors and stuff, and make these amazing coffee tables and everything. Well, he goes to a woodworker's auction up in Oregon, and I met him earlier this summer, and we got to talking about wood, and so he told me he was going to go to this. I told him what kind of woods I was interested in, and he said he would look out for me and see if he found something that I would like. And he knocked this one out of the park. You can kind of see the top edges of them, but let's get the tripod folded down. There they are. Look at that. We got two pieces with little bits of burl on them, but we got these 2 big slabs of maple burl. And you guys know I cut most of my own burl now, box elder and cottonwood, but I don't have any maple around here to cut. But look at these. That's 2 foot tall and 31 inches wide on one of them. And there is some really nice figure in those. So after I get done shooting the video, I've got to start another set of burl getting stabilized. And so I'll pull it out of the, the little dehydrator that I made, and then stick it up in the toaster, let it warm up, and then pretty much all day long, and then it'll go into the the chamber with the the stabilizer, the cactus juice, and then it'll sit there for about a week or so, and then finally get stabilized and everything. So I just wanted to share. I mean, pretty wood's always nice to look at, right? Okay, so this little stone right here is the one that we did the whole project on. This is some sort of a silicon carbide stone, whether it's a crystalline or a Norton, I don't know. But it is turning out to be a really nice stone. And we took the coarse side from looking all nasty like the fine sign does right now to looking, it's pretty much refreshed and ready to go to work. There's a little bit in the middle here that we didn't get. I'll probably go ahead and finish this out when I break out the sick powder and everything, because we're going to do the next set of videos is on the 220 grit side. Okay, we're going to go over, I alluded to this a couple of times in a couple of the other videos, that it seems to me like a freshly conditioned stone, the way it cuts the edge into the knife, seems to me like those edges are superior to an edge off of a clogged stone that isn't cutting so aggressively. And so that is going to like I said, that seems to me like that's what's happening in my head. And so we're going to try that out. We're going to try it with this silicon carbide stone, the fine side. And then I'm probably going to do the same thing on a soft and a hard Arkansas. Probably one from Natural Whetstone Company, and then I do have, we might do it with some Dan stones. I mean, I've got a soft and a black and a translucent. I think maybe that's all I've got from Dan's. If I feel like I need just a regular hard from Dan's, well, then I'll order one up and we'll, do the test on that too. But that's going to be an exciting series also. So anyway, so we took this old stone from Real Nasty, and we sharpened up did a scratch test pattern, or scratch test on a knife, and then, showed it on the video, or on the microscope and everything. And then we tried out different things to, continue flattening and conditioning the stone. So, I suppose right now, I'm going to bounce around a bit, but right now we'll probably go through, okay, so we kind of proved through the microscope shots that there is a big difference between cleaning the stone, okay, so that would be taking a grimy old stone and, washing it in Dawn and then sharpening, or, using WD-40 or your mineral oil and then just sharpening and, cleaning the stone, getting all the trash out of in between the particles of the stone out, and how that helps it helps the stone cut because now it's clean. There's not a whole lot of trash in there. Then, but that's not reconditioning to me. To me, that's just cleaning. Basically washing the thing, right? Then we went over. We didn't really touch on lubrication. I like using mineral oil. A lot of guys like using Dawn and water. Some guys like WD-40. I want to say somebody told me they like using Ballistol, the gun cleaner and lubricant. So that's something that I didn't really get into. I think that would be under cleaning and lubrication, those two. This one was more on flattening and conditioning. So then we went over flattening. What was really nice and aggressive to flatten a stone. Get it from being all dished out to relatively flat, so you have a flat surface. And then we took it a step farther, which is something that I don't think gets talked about a whole lot, and that's conditioning the surface of the stone. Getting rid of that top layer of dull particles and getting down to another layer of fresh, sharp particles, which I think a lot of folks seem to think that if it's flat and clean and lubricated, that it's cutting to its full potential. And I don't believe that's the case, and I think I showed that on the microscope. Once you have it clean, and then you have your lubrication system that you like, and then you have it flattened, then you need to condition the stone, and like I said, get the dull particles off the top and get down to fresh abrasive that will cut aggressively and efficiently. So anyway, so just a quick recap of what we did. If I remember right, I'll try to go in the order. We tried the rubbing stone from Norton. This usually comes in their kit for the water stones. I've used it for the water stones a couple of times, still do occasionally. It works pretty good there. For the oil stone, or the silicon carbide stone, I was actually surprised that it did cut as aggressively as it did. Now, bear in mind, these silicon carbide stones, the one with the soft binders, they're about the softest oil stone that you're going to run into. Okay, so they're a third as hard as like an Arkansas stone, even a soft one. Maybe a third to half as hard as an India stone, like a Norton Fine India. Okay, so they're pretty soft. But this did, start abrading it, start flattening it, but it left a glazed surface finish on the stone. So while it did flatten it, it didn't really condition it all that well. Then we tried the diamonds. The diamonds, as far as I could tell, kind of sucked. Oh, first of all, these right here are like 30 or 40 bucks. Okay, so if you take the original stone, if you buy a brand new Norton crystalline, like this one over here. I think you can see that. Yeah. Yeah, you buy a brand new 2x8x1 crystalline coarse fine combo off Amazon with the Prime. I think you're looking at like $22, $24, something like that. This stone right here is like $30 or $40. So you're spending almost twice what the stone cost on something to flatten and condition it that kind of flattens but doesn't really condition. Diamonds are worse. Now granted, this is a cheap version from Harbor Freight. I bought it, I thought it would be okay. Honestly, I didn't really care for it, but I can't stand to throw a lot of sharpening stuff away, so it usually just bums around on the shelf over there. It didn't really do much of anything on either one. About the only thing it did was help glaze the surface of the stone over. Okay, and then buying diamonds to recondition, you know, a $25 stone doesn't really seem like a good use of money, you know, like an efficient use. So I didn't really care for the diamonds. Then we tried my old method of using worn out files, granted worn out, not fresh ones, because it'll kill the file, right? So you use a corner of the file to basically carve off the top section of stone. You know, this is one of those that it is effective, okay? If you have a good supply of old worn out files and you know you don't care that the surface of the stone is going to be flat when you're done, you know, this is a viable way to do it. It seems to me like this works better after a sharpening session. Okay, so you know I use mineral oil as a lubricant. So you know you pull the stone out of the drawer, you oil it up, you sharpen 10 or 20 knives, something like that, and then you know go have lunch and then come back, and then it seems to me like that the top layer of stone scrapes off easier after that. It could be that the mineral oil affects the binder. You know, I'm not too sure. But this is a pretty good viable way to do it if you have old worn out files and that's the way you want to do it. Or if you're in a bind and you don't have access to anything else and you got a file there, okay, that works too. Then we tried the sandpaper on the granite tile. Honestly, that worked a lot better than what I thought it was going to. Again, this is, you know, I've tried flattening these stones before, and I never really remember having a whole lot of luck with it, which is why I decided to shoot this video, was just to go back through all the different methods and get them on film, well, whatever the digital version of film is. You know, get it logged in, you know, so that I can go back and you know, take a look at it again. But the 80 grit 3M paper actually did a surprisingly good job, as long as it was fresh. Okay, so you could take that 80 grit paper, and if you didn't have a big divot, if you had just kind of a small divot, you know, and you wanted to go through 6 sheets of that paper, you know, hey, I think you could get a pretty good job done. And then condition it on a very fresh piece of paper, and you know, you would, I think it would work pretty good. But that's pretty high dollar sandpaper. I want to say it's $1, maybe $1.50 a sheet at Home Depot. You know, if that's what you had, I think that would be a good viable way to go about it. Okay. Then the next thing that we did, and the one that I thought was gonna like suck completely, was the cinder block. Okay. Now granted, I would bet that there's probably a lot of variation in cinder blocks. You know, and I don't know what goes into the construction of cinder blocks, what makes one cinder block better than another cinder block at flattening and conditioning oil stones. You know, sorry, I don't think I'm going to spend the time to figure it out. But this is one that I had laying in the backyard. I did try it just with the cinder block. You know, wet the surface of the cinder block and rub the stone on it. It actually started flattening a little bit, but it was painfully slow. This would be something, if you had hours and hours and hours of spare time, you know, okay, knock yourself out. I don't have that. So So I didn't do a whole lot with just the cinder block. Also, while it did flatten, it did glaze. Okay, so yes, it did abrade, the stone and get it a little bit flatter, but the parts that it contacted were horribly glazed over and not very well conditioned at all. Okay, that was with the bare cinder block. Now, once we put the sand, the coarse, I don't know if this was play sand or what. I'm pretty sure that I bought it from Home Depot in a bag, and I was using it to do some sand casting, like with molten aluminum and stuff. And it had too coarse of a finish, surface finish on the object I was casting. And so I just kept a bucket of it around here. It came in handy, like to stick hot parts in or something. And so this is just really, really coarse sand. Now, the second you put that loose, coarse sand on this cinder block, holy cow, it started eating the crap out of that stone. Okay? Something about loose particles on a flat surface just eats these stones up. Now, this sand, it is not what silicon carbide is. Okay? It's not graded, and it's not as hard, and it breaks down a lot faster. But if you are in a position where you don't have anything else, or if you don't have the money to go get the silicon carbide and the plate glass or a tile, and all you've got is your front step, and you've got a sandy section, in the backyard somewhere, then yeah, if you're rubbing a rock or a sharpening stone on a piece of cinder block, grab a handful of sand and put it in there along with the water. Those loose particles will absolutely flatten that stone a lot better. That being said, of all of these, except for possibly the sandpaper, that loose sand on the block had the best chance, I think, of conditioning the surface to something that was workable. Okay, it doesn't cut it like stick powder does, but I think if you were to practice, or if you had, very coarse sand, or you had a place where you could get coarse sand and then medium sand or something like that was handy, and like I said, you didn't have the money for the stick powder, that would be a viable option in my mind. Okay, now the last one that we did was the silicon carbide powder. Okay, now this stuff, when I found out about it, well, people had been suggesting it to me several times, especially when I shot the video on flattening with the old files. A couple of folks had said something about getting this stick powder. Honestly, I didn't listen. Okay, but then I started seeing it crop up in other places, and I thought, well, maybe that's a thing, So I ordered up some silicon carbide powder. Now, I had no idea, how much silicon carbide powder you would go through, and it does vary quite a bit. I mean, if you're flattening one of these, nice soft silicon carbide stones, you don't go through a whole lot of it. If you're flattening a 10 by 3 Natural Whetstone Company's translucent black, I think that's what they call it, oh, you go through quite a bit of it, let me tell you. And that's a lot of surface area and a very hard stone. But anyway, I didn't know how much grit you would go through. So I got on Amazon, and they sold it in 1 pound bags, 3 pound bags, and 5 pound bags, if I remember right. Well, the cost of a 5 pound bag was only a couple dollars more than a 1 pound bag. So I thought, well, let's go with the 5 pound bag, right? That is what a 5 pound bag of 600 grit silicon carbide powder looks like, right? I'm pretty sure I will never go through the rest of this in my entire career. Alright? I mean, I'm 40-ish right now. I plan on making knives for maybe another 20, 30 years, something like that. I highly doubt I'm going to finish this. Okay, so that's just a lot of powder. Okay, but it works really, really good. Okay, and it is graded, so you know exactly, hey, this is 600 grit. So what we did on this series, because you got to order this through Amazon, right? This stuff right here, the tumbler rock polisher accessories. Okay, that stuff, I actually had some of it laying around because I bought my boy a rock polisher a while back, and we polished, you know, some pebbles, and it was kind of cool and everything. Well, I bought this box right here at Harbor Freight this last week, I want to say for $13, okay? And it does come, now it comes with all 4 of your grits, which I didn't even use the pre-polish or the polish because we're working with a coarse side of a silicon carbide stone here. I didn't even use the fine grit, I just used the coarse. And that worked amazing. Now this is about what you get for the amount of coarse side. So that's going to, you know, let's weigh that right quick. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute, we don't have to weigh it. It says right here, 4 ounces of coarse and 4 ounces of fine. That right there, you know, I think I used maybe a teaspoon of it to almost completely finish flattening this stone. Okay? So, you know, for, well, heck, even with my usage, once you get a stone flat and you're just maintaining it, you know, something like that, I would guess would last probably 2 or 3 years, you know, unless I got a new stone that, you know, that really needed a lot of work. So for $13 and a piece of plate glass, you know, that's a really, really nice bargain, I think. And the silicon carbide is absolutely hands down the best out of all the methods that I tried. It flattens quick. It conditions very well as long as you finish on fresh powder. It's very inexpensive, you know, $13 for that combination pack. And this piece of plate glass, like I said, we were replacing a furnace in a place, and this this piece right here and 3 more were stuffed in a corner in the furnace room, you know, so I got it for free. And you can find it on the side of the road, glass tabletops. This looked like it was like a bookshelf sort of deal. Or, you know, the big piece of plate glass that's stuffed over there that's, you know, this big that I get from the glass shop. I think those are only $15, $20 when I go get them. So for the amount of cost, you know, even if you were to buy this and a big sheet of plate glass, you would be right about at what the cost of that stone cost, okay? And then you would be able to, you know, condition that stone all the way until it got to be, you know, a 1/4 inch thick or so. And then you were afraid of breaking it, and then you could glue it to a piece of wood and, you know, finish using it like that. So you could take one of these, you know, $25 stones, and with $30 worth of grit and glass, and you might have to go get some more grit, use that stone completely up and get amazing service from it throughout its entire lifetime. Instead of dishing it out and then having to work with a glazed surface the whole time and then throwing it away when you got sick and tired of it. So as far as I'm concerned, that silicon carbide is the best. And if you've got, you know, 20, 30 bucks, that's absolutely the system to go with. It is a little bit messy, but, you know, that's why we have backyards or patios or that sort of stuff with. The only thing I would caution is do not throw this stuff down the drain. I think this said it in here somewhere. Maybe it didn't. But when you're done, wash this stuff off into a trash can, not into your kitchen sink. Okay, so so that went over all what we did and everything. Also, granted, this was just a quick rundown of each method, okay? So, you know, you might have that magical cinder block that just eats stones up. You know, hey, if you've got that thing, keep the thing and keep using it. If you've already paid for, you know, one of these, you know, keep using that thing, right? But the silicon carbide, or if, you know, if this is all you can afford, why then keep using that. But hopefully, showing everything through the microscope, you know, kind of gives you an idea of what's happening at each stage, so that you can get better results with whatever method that you're using. Okay. Also, when you're going through this and deciding how you want to condition your stones, I think you ought to take into account where you fit in for sharpening. Okay. So if you're the average Joe or Jolene, that is, you're just maintaining and sharpening your personal knives, your kitchen knives, your pocket knives, scissors, garden shears, stuff like that. I mean, that's in a different class than, say, a knife maker like me who sharpens, hundreds of knives a year. Okay, so you might be perfectly well suited for, the cinder block. You might have a patch on your front porch that works really good. Or you might want to go ahead and grab the absolute best. It's just up to you. Anybody over the average Joe or Jolene, I would say if you're a hobbyist, you're the kind of guy that, sharpens your knives, sharpens your friends' knives. Maybe you got a YouTube channel and, you sharpen a couple of knives for people, around the country and charge a couple of bucks for it, something like that. If you're from there up, I think, now you're making money from your hobby and you're doing it as a profession. From there up, I think you owe it to yourself and to your customers and the amount of time it takes to go ahead and get the stick powder and the plate glass or, a granite tile and, get the best you can. Even if you're a hobbyist and you're sharpening knives for other people, the edges that you put on, hey, that's your name, your reputation. They need to be the absolute best edges that you can do, and they need to be able to be done quick, okay? The difference between a glazed over stone and a fresh stone, freshly conditioned, depends on steel type, angle, how bad it was, your level of sharpening skill. Hey, if it takes me more than like 3 to 5 minutes to sharpen a knife when I don't have the camera and I'm not explaining everything to somebody, I'm usually pretty upset. 3 to 5 minutes, okay? That can be a really beat up knife. But still, I mean, 3 to 5 minutes is a long time to sharpen a knife for me, okay? Most of the time, it's that or less. I mean, and I don't really get into spending hours sharpening a knife or a straight razor, okay? There's guys out there that think that sitting there rubbing a chunk of steel on a rock is that's like yoga or meditation to them, okay? It's not to me. When I got a dull knife, that means that's a knife I'm either selling or it's a knife that I'm working with, and every minute that I spend sharpening that knife is a minute that I'm not using that knife and working. And so I just need to get through it quick, get a good edge back on it, and get back to work. Okay, it's not meditation for me at all. Okay, I need to sharpen and get back to work. Now, granted, this stuff right here, this sort of video, when I get out the microscope and I start looking through all that kind of stuff, that part I find absolutely fascinating. But just sharpening knives, that's kind of like watching paint dry to me. I mean, it's boring, but it's work that needs done, and so I do it, and I do it quickly. So anyway, yeah, if you're anything over the average Joe or Jolene, get the stick powder, the plate glass, or the granite tile, and do it right. So that's your hobbyists, your guys that sharpen a couple of knives for a couple of bucks here and there, butchers, cabinet makers, carpenters, anybody that uses an edge tool that needs a sharpening stone. Condition your stones. You'll thank yourself for spending the extra money and the time to learn how to do it. And then, of course, if you're professional sharpeners or knife makers, absolutely. Hey, time is money. Keep your tools cut and sharp, and you'll spend less time doing it. So anyway, this was a really fun series to make, or to shoot and make. I learned a lot, and I'm glad that now it's all on film so that I can go back and reference it. Maybe 5 years down the road I'll forget, that this kind of sort of works okay, but it leaves a glazed surface. That this actually works surprisingly well on a soft silicon carbide stone. And I think these next couple of ones on the 220 grit silicon carbide side, and then the next one with the soft and hard Arkansas, and seeing what sort of edges a fresh stone makes, if they're superior to a dull stone or not. I think that's going to be exciting. So, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. I hope you enjoyed the video, the whole series. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. And we will see you next time.